Okay, welcome to your restorative lesson today. Let's call this a lesson, a session of rib work in the beginning. So, kind of freeing your rib cage. So, part of that's going to be extremity work. So, you're going to have your bolster across the mat. I like to be near a wall space because we'll do some wall work today. And have a couple blankets behind the bolster with space in between for your arms. So you're going to approach getting up onto the bolster and the block, which is on its lowest setting in front of the bolster, right? And it's right in the middle. And I like to kind of reach my ribs back and kind of feel where the back of the pelvis, so it centers on the block. So it's not under your buttocks, but it's right in that kind of hooked position of, and it feels bad when you sit on it like this for more than a few seconds. So you've got to lower back so that you can alleviate that bad feeling. Okay, so first bring the feet to about hips distance, knees bending. Feel when you lower back your head on the blankets that there's plenty of height. Let's not skimp on blanket height for this one, because we want to kind of ease into that rib expansion. So add a sandbag if you like, no requirement. But when that sand is a cross or from the heart to the belly, it can be either direction. If at first you feel okay with the sand and moments into this beginning set, you decide to move it away because there'll be three different frames that will work in with the breathing muscles. This will be frame one. You might use it and then shed it. So just know that going in. Okay, now when I kind of press into my sandbag, I find that I sometimes alert my breathing higher up. So I really want you to emphasize that when you're breathing, when your arms are open, the hands relax, you set the prop so that you can feel gravity kind of taking over after a few moments of just lying back. So parts of the lower back will start to kind of settle in. But when you're breathing, really work with the movement in the center of the body so that it's not just a diaphragm focus. Let's just keep it so we know there's anatomy and there's words for things, but we want to keep our shoulders still, breathe in through the nose, and work the middle of the body, think from the sandbag and lower, to move with each breath. Now, if you get a little alarmed with the exhale and you feel like you must exhale out of the mouth, of course it's okay. I'd rather have you breathe and hold it or barely feel like you can exhale through the nose. But the nose is, that's a great place for filtering. And in general, will keep you a little healthier if you emphasize breathing in through the nose, just for the nervous system itself. So that instruction of inhaling and feeling that little lift of the sand or just the middle body. You might want to add a glass of water every time you do class, right? Because you could get thirsty through this focus. Okay, so feel when there's movement, and you might find some satisfaction of just that experience of stretching the breathing muscles. The legs can stretch down now. They can also stay bent. Yeah, please make the choice that feels suitable for your circulation. That doesn't feel like it's cramping your style. And let's add just a few more moments with the legs either bent straight up or the legs straight down. You feel the weight of your head on the blankets. Maybe close your eyes. And that smooth breath. Just centering into this little dose of time for self-care. And you'll start to bring the feet together, the soles of the feet together and the knees apart. And coming into cobbler's pose likely shifts the awareness in the lower extremities, that connection of the muscles that attach, right, torso to pelvis. If it's alarming because if there's intensity, you're not so sure, it's just a deeper pressure of stretch, you might slide the feet a little farther down or take moments of the knees pointing up and then try it again. And feeling for this brief position, this second kind of shape, feeling how the neck changes, right? For me, by now, this is interesting, right? I don't feel like I need my second blanket as much. So you decide. If you want to keep the two, that's fine. If you feel that you're starting to round too much in the upper neck, you can remove one of the blankets. But if you're cozy, I would stick with it. Okay, now feel how, now we're going to align in this next frame the leg parts, kind of the first two positions together. So it moves fairly quick. You'll bring the knees to point up, so the bottoms of the feet for the moment are on the ground. So you're in, I call this standing feet position, especially when I'm on my back. It's a humorous, just naming of it, standing feet. But lift up that right foot, and you can, right, when you're on your back. It's interesting when you're on your back how the pelvis shifts, and see if you can link up the right ankle to the left knee. And if you can keep your sand on, try. You're accessing that lower reservoir more if you have the sand on here to keep it kind of quiet in the shoulders, so you're not starting to fuss around with, I guess you could say, unnecessary extra effort, right? So let the chest stay open, the heart relax, and engage in that connection of the right ankle to left knee. Right knee shifts out. It tries to loosen up the hip joint, but it'll be an interesting hip journey today. So just keep it simple here. We're going to be working through pigeon pose and wide stance, hip flexibility stuff today. So just take a simple motion of breathing, even when you're in a shape. The breath is each moment. Okay, now shift, so you change the foot that's up onto the next knee and connect the ankle, and you might have different habits of the leg attaching. And I find this interesting. One side I pull through a little bit in the center of my back, and the side I tend to kind of shift through my hip joint. It's just, the more you do this, the more you notice your differences and how you can help yourself find alignment, and find balance. You're probably the one that could do it for yourself the best. Okay, so let that left knee feel that it can shift a bit more. So if I slip my foot a little bit on the right leg to try to let the left knee lean down, I might come back to the proper shape so the ankle really is supported on that right lower thigh. Just let that be enough. Give it a few moments of centering. And then what we'll do is we'll get a feeling how that right foot is pressing to the floor. These leg connections are a little weird with the block under the pelvis, I feel. Okay, and then bring that left foot down to the right foot again. Let both feet find each other. The knees out like you were a few moments ago, cobbler's pose, feet together, knees out. Okay, just about 3 more breaths here. So filter the air in through the nose. Exhaling out, how it feels comfortable for you. Wonderful. So let's take the sand off first. over to the left if it's not already gone. And let the hands touch towards the rib space, like where you really feel there is separation occurring here, right? It's not necessarily higher up at sternum, it's a little bit lower. So right where you can actually feel like there's two parts, although it's a rib cage, okay? And so when you move the knees in towards each other, right, that might feel like this whole center kind of zips in, or it zips up a little bit. So zipping it up. And then you'll lift up your hips and slide the block out. I would put the block just a little bit overhead, or carefully toss it overhead. And then you'll let your ribs lean into the bolster, roll left, and turn your head towards the blanket, slide your left elbow between, and shift into side sage. So we'll go right into it. We'll get a ball, if we have one. We'll place it on the inside of the right thigh. If you don't have a ball, a block is fine. And when you lean into this left side, I want you to reach the left arm between the bolster and the blanket. So the arm is actually stretching, okay? You know this stretch from when you've sat up before and taken like a deltoid stretch, okay? So this feels really easy for the deltoid, but when it stretches this direction, for some of us, but when I add my sand, actually I have to add my sand before I get that arm through, my sand can be straight down the side, the left arm between, and then maybe my right arm eventually makes its way over the side towards the block. Okay, so get a feel of that reach. See if you can extend through the waist, right? And play with it. This would be a good time to just kind of search with your head relaxed. Now that's a confusion right there. Search with your brain relaxing. Okay, see if you can work on muscle memory, something a little different. So I move my arm a little bit, kind of worm it around a little here, squirm it. That's what worms do, they squirm, worm squirm. Okay, now the arm for me feels like this is enough already. If I was to touch down a block, it might feel too much. So I'm going to move my block over kind of kitty corner to, if I look back towards the right, to about 1 o'clock or so with my arm reaching. And that feels a little easier in my shoulder joint. Okay, now some of us, what's best is on the side or down to the bolster. Okay, but what's important here is the equilibrium here of movement with the ribs. So try to find that equal ratio breath. And the lower abdomen might have an advantage here to gradually move just the right amount. Okay, let the bones rest here. It's weight bearing on that left hip, especially if you have sand on the opposite part of the body. It's okay if you are lounging a bit and you're not sure where that arm should go, but you're particularly focused on letting the weight of the body kind of sink. And so give it some time. If you start to wander with that right arm again, that's okay. The sand falls off, it's okay too. I find it easier to breathe through my nose both directions on the side versus on my back. So just notice when you can operate that way with your breath. Okay, now in between these two sides, we're going to let the sand fall away or push it away. And that side has some, I don't think it's the biggest stretch I could create, but I do feel some span of reach in my side. Okay, so when you start to come up, I would be cautious of how you lift your neck up. So feel it, you can kind of rebound, open the chest towards the ceiling, get a feeling of that, good. Okay, there's a little bit of abdominal area that has circulation. And then when you turn back towards that left side, you're going to let your head roll, let your hands both touch the ground to help you up. Okay, and then we'll push the bolster back towards the blankets. Take the ball, or if you don't have a ball, a block is okay. And you'll shift so you're sitting in front of the bolster on the floor with the ball between the knees. Okay, so yeah, kind of reset your attire if you need to. Okay, reach forward, and I have the ball between, and I'm pushing into it. So now you can feel kind of the measuring of muscular, kind of how equal it engages in the center. So I want you to relax the pressure on the ball and put your elbows back. We're all different lengths, so I imagine some of you feel like you put your elbows on the blankets, and that's okay. So rest your elbows back. See if you can give a little bit of your body weight back to the bolster. And just here, so I'm leaning back. This is much easier than when I was sitting up a moment ago, much easier. But there's still some quality of reservation here in the center. So inhaling, belly relaxes, and exhale, squeeze the ball. You're just leaning back. You're not coming back up yet. Inhale, relax. Exhale, squeeze. And see if you can do that breathing through the nose. So relaxing the face. And last time, when you push into the ball, see if you can find a way to relate to squeezing that's comfortable enough that the legs are engaged. You feel kind of a little ping in the abdominal area awareness. Belly ping. Okay. And that's it. I don't want you to try to sit up right now. Just let it be. And then relax that pressure. Of course, you can do whatever you need. If you need to sit up, that's okay. But now feel that when you lift up the heart, okay, first things first, push into the ball, squeeze. Bring the hands to the knees so you have some help. Good. And then pull on the knees to bring yourself up. Now, if I slide my feet farther forward, it's kind of I like the wider base to work off of, the wider platform to be balanced. So bring the arms so they're in front of the knees. They don't have to be the hands in front, not your arms, unless you'd be right here. Okay, so squeeze and release. Just arriving here. Squeeze and release. And squeeze. See if you can hold that for a few moments. And release. And lift up the heart. Okay, take the ball out. And very simple, you're going to hold underneath the leg, so where it's comfortable for you. Some of us, it's higher up under the thighs, some it's closer to the knees. And slide the feet and feel if you can lift up the heart. Okay, likely your leg muscles, they might contract a lot, they might do almost none. Some days I feel like this responds. I don't do this every day, but I do feel like it's kind of a 50-50 response as far as muscle engagement. But what I want you to work with here is lifting the heart and then stretch the feet forward, hopefully not right against the wall. Lift up, bring your hands back to the bolster, and actually you probably need to bend your knees to get here, but lift up so you're sitting on top of it. Have a micro bend of the knees, lift up the heart, okay? Flex the feet and stretch forward. Try to do this with minimal prop addition, but if you need a block, like I like the blocks in front of me besides my legs, use the block so your spine is not rounding, right? So I might have to have my blocks closer towards my upper leg and lift up the chest, lean forward to stretch out your legs, mostly, partially your back too. You can make your blocks setting a little lower, of course. You could go all the way down or no blocks. But I want you to flex through the feet so actively that there's a response of circulation. Oh, you're waking it up. Okay. Now, feeling the chest forward, feel the reach through the feet. Take this one seriously if you can, although you shouldn't take too much seriously, but feeling that when you reach your arms forward off of any props, turn the palms towards the ceiling, feel the hands pushing up, and see when you can find just center ground of sitting upright. That's it. So you're trying to move your head to center. I know you might have your head leaning forward, but you think it's centered. So probably more brain back than forward. All right. Okay. So did a good job just with arriving with upright, and then slide back off your bolster. Take a block back behind you. And let's take side sage on the other side. If you're feeling a little bit kind of cranked up because of that tension poses, you might do a little windshield wiper before the side sage because everything was kind of in rigid alignment, trying to keep the centerpiece of the body supported. So loosening can feel good. So taking the bolster between, you're going to stretch between the two, right? So the ball inside the left knee, I bend the right knee to the bolster and next to it. Okay, I'm not on the bolster with my leg, but just next to it. And then I tend to grab my sand and then guide it on my side. I think you're getting better. I imagine if you use sand, you're getting better at it with practice. How you adapt with, you don't have someone to put it on you. It's just kind of the reality we're in with Zooming. So if it doesn't feel like you can achieve that, you could, and I use my opposite foot where the ball is under my left leg. I use my right foot quite a bit to kind of find where the sweet spot is with the support. I really like having a ball there on my left inside lower leg part, right next to my knee. Okay, so the sand will likely take your breath to strengthen your breathing muscles. I want to say the word take your breath away, but that's probably not really a positive thought, huh? Okay, so head is resting down. Okay. You can even put your left hand around to your neck and notice if you're really engaging and tightening there. Kind of like you're massaging your neck, and just guide it to rest. Guide it to resting. Okay, now left arm reaches to the block or not, you get to decide. But if you notice the circulation in your waist and in your hip flexor on that left side, the front of the upper thigh, the thigh lid, if you feel that hip flexor, there's several flexors. That's probably enough for me. I can just kind of meditate on that, and that's plenty. But feel the breathing arriving through the rib spaces. And feel the weight into that right hip. Probably the weight into your brain is even more significant because we're going to lift and try to look, and we efforters, we try, and so try to let it go here. And if the sand feels like it should just slide off, that's fine. Sometimes it stays pretty good and then it just seems like it's an extra pressure. So it might just naturally go away. Okay, now with that move of the side to sense stretch, this is such a nice way to achieve spaciousness in the body, right? It's a bit of a easy way to go with this. So let's take a tactic of just an inner kind of just the inner spiral work. So what we'll do is we'll move the block from over behind us and take it to the side of your bolster. So this time, when you lean down to your elbow and your hand come up as carefully as you can. And when I come up, what I notice is my back, this kind of spiral from the spine axis stretching to the ribs. So we'll take a seat on our bolster. We'll do just one more little seated pattern or lying down, and we're going to come to all fours. So let's try this. We're going to sit on the bolster, bring the right leg to bending so that you have a sandbag on the right inner thigh. You can see that right inner thigh sand. My left leg is bending too, because I don't know what else it would do. It has a habit of it. And you can either put your left foot on the floor or on a block or on the other side of your right, besides your right knee, right? You can cross it to a twist. So you might be here and we're taking a twist. That's what we're doing. We're doing inner spiral work. So you might find, oh, this is enough, right? But you might also cross the left leg over the right, lift up the heart, bring the right arm now touching the left leg, right? And then take that turn. So they're both touching the left leg, but I find the difference is, I want you to workshop it for a moment. So try them, at least two of them, and take the moment of kind of noticing how the movement is in the ribs and the spine. Well, you'll notice the ribs probably way more than a spine, but that's mystery stuff, huh? But when you breathe, notice how you can engage in that rotation, either with the foot on something or, well, it's on something anyway, isn't it? Or it's across the leg to the floor. So the foot is either open or it's touching down. Yeah, this kind of makes you feel like, we're doing movement therapy, right? Not so much like prescribed poses, right? We're trying to feel, how can this be therapeutic? And the postures are helpful that we learn over the years, but there's other things that we can take from other schools of wisdom here. So when you find that turn, give it a few moments when you select one of the options with the foot, whether it's on the other side of the leg or on the block or the floor. I like using my right arm as kind of a toning. It's toning, it's pressing. There's tone in the arm, right? And I can create that kind of, the arm is like a pole. I try to keep it very firm, and then I try to bring my energy to the rest of the body. And like when you stand on the leg, that leg has to stay like a pole. Okay, now when you come back forward, roll out the shoulders. Let the left foot do whatever the left foot wants to do. It doesn't have many places it could go wander, but it's stuck to the end of the leg. But you might flex the foot, you might put it on the block, but take a decent amount, 10 to 15 shoulder rolls, shrugging and rolling back. Yeah, and then feel if you can kind of wiggle around, moving through the ribs, and then change the twist. So just change sides. Left leg has the sand now, and I uncross that right leg now. It's a little bit of a puzzle. Pose puzzles. Okay, sand on top of that left thigh. Kind of feel your center when you're sitting. There's just so many postural habits we have from so many years of sitting that it might be a lot of prolapse for you. It just is adding up. So try to work with that inner lift, not just like I get my heart to go up, my chest is open, but it's even below that we have to focus. So if this foot on the block feels better, for me, it's a little better on my pelvis to have that sense of motion up versus dropping. So I'm always wondering, like, what are these poses? Like, should I follow the poses? Should I follow other sciences? So movement science. So feel what works for you, centering and then turning to the right. Maybe you need a block behind you under your hand. If you're short, it would be helpful. If you're not, not necessary. But feel that rotation. Bring that left arm to the right leg, whether the right foot is on the block or the leg is across. You can feel for yourself, probably looking and trying to figure out what Nicole is doing with her foot or her ribs or her breath is not anywhere as interesting as what you're doing, right, for yourself. And you probably have a different exploration meter than I do, right? Maybe you're, who knows, taking a water break. Okay, maybe that's the best thing. So feel where the waist is kind of squirming with the breath through the nose. Yeah, it's really hydrating to breathe deeply. Feel the body, enjoy that. And exhale just as well as the breath in. If you're starting to really grip up this left arm, especially if you have this kind of a rotation, you might soften it for a moment, maybe foot on the block, and then come back forward, roll it out. You don't have to change the footing much except for the right foot's got to come away if it's hooked over the left knee. Right, we did that in the very beginning, right, with our arm on our back, with our foot connected to the knee. Okay, so now we got to really move this mid body. So we'll take the sand away, okay? And I want you to have your body to turn, so taking the block off to the side. And try to use your other extremities to get things around. Sometimes it's fun to give my feet assignments too. And then let's turn so that our wall is behind us. And we're going to need a blanket under our knees. So you'll take, even if you're on carpet and it's already cozy enough, maybe you don't need a blanket, but I just use one. It feels like it gives me a little bit of lift. Okay, so I'm going to have to get my feet close to the wall so they touch. And I'm just going to turn my bolster lengthwise under the center of the body. And my blocks are going to hide over here so they're not in your way, but I do have them. Okay, so, surfing here we come. Bring the hands on forward, and when you lower down, feel how there's a passage of time for this whole front leg to stretch. It's pretty brief, I'm aware, but when you stretch forward, feel how the spine, it kind of enjoys that reach. And then when you lower down, come down to crocodile pose. So the fear of the surfer, any water creatures. Okay, so the elbows are wide and your forehead is down. And you don't have to have your hands holding onto the elbows. You could have your hands in a stack, which for me feels more pleasant. And my forehead is on my hands. Okay, so energetically now we can create a little bit, maybe more happy space in our pelvis and our back because we're not sitting. We're not as in much of a cramped position. It's a shorter span. So starting to get there. Let your buttocks relax so you're not gripping the glutes in the moment here. Push into the wall with the feet. Okay, now my knees are kind of in a just dropping bend position. So I want you to try to lift up the knees. If you're too close to the wall, you might have to scoot a little forward on your props. But you're going to push into your feet and make the legs active and really tone, like you're pressing. And it's really helpful for my back, right, to have my legs activated like this. Okay, now relax the knees back down. You can have your head down the whole time. I know talking into my hands is not going to work for you here. So let the knees relax, relax the buttocks. Okay, and then that was a moment, huh? Do it again. So head is down onto the hands. You're going to lift up good the knees, press back into, well, actually you're pushing into the wall so that you have a surge of energy towards your brainstem, right? It's like pushing brainstem, reach, okay? And then relax, all things. Okay, taking it one more time, push into your feet, push. So you let the knees lift. There's action. See what kind of action you can create in the legs that's not hurting your back. So you are activating the glutes, but just in the right way. So you don't need to completely tone and tighten up the glutes. Okay, now relax the knees. Bring the hands back. So you'll slide your hands from underneath your head. Your head lifts a little, arms back, airplane wings, palms towards the sides. Okay, my neck is lifted. I don't have my head down, but I'm trying to move my shoulders back. Okay, now hands down, press, lift up the heart just a little bit, and then really press so your elbows bend, and then come up to table. Okay, so now we're going to take our blocks on the inside of our mat, and you can move your bolster aside, but I want you to keep it in easy reach because we might need it for one of our standing poses, so keep it really close. And then as you get those blocks, actually, let's put them a little bit out to the side. So you're going to stretch your hands down, widen out through your fingers, taking alternating forward, arch, flexing, reaching. So this is actually, I think, more extension here. It's not necessarily flexion. So you're alternating between flexing, extending forward to a variation of upward facing dog, and then your head centers down, pressing and reaching the hips back. Okay, now lift up the knees and see if you need to pedal out the feet like you're alternating, bending them a little bit away from the wall. That's perfect. That's a little more satisfying for my calves personally. But eventually, I want you to get a feeling of the right amount of support, whether your heels are up a little bit on the wall. I find perfect, the baseboard's perfect for me. But if I put my heels and I try to press it down, it's just a little much right now. It's a little too much. So feel what's the right amount and let your head center between the arms. Kind of the most intense shape so far for muscles. Okay, upside down. It's great for circulation, so give it a moment. If you need to come down on the knees and still work with this, you can let your head still center between the arms. No one has to have their knees up. Okay, now take the feet closer together. Try this with the knees up when you take your step. Just give it a try for circulation, for muscularization, right? So body mechanics. So you'll bend through that right knee, and I want you to try using gravity. So you're going to launch the right foot forward. What I find sometimes, some people find they can launch forward, for instance, if their block is under their hands, it's much easier. It brings the floor up to you. So you can always try that. You can come down on your knees, get your blocks, and then step forward if you find that was just a bad try, okay? Give it a few moments until you find that right foot between the blocks or a little forward because you're taller than me. Okay, feel the right knee and bending. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to do some standing forward folds. So I want you to let the left heel start to lower downwards. Now, I honestly can get my heel almost to the floor, but it just doesn't feel very good. I'm not enjoying that. So I'm going to let my left heel be a little bit up at the baseboard and then bring more focus to my right leg straightening. Okay, my blocks can go as high as I want them. In fact, if I have my blocks up at the highest setting, My heel probably will come down a little easier. But my feet are in two different tracks. They're not on the same line. And try to reach your torso a little forward so it's a trunk stretch. Your trunk. Okay, let's get that trunk to stretch. So my right leg is reaching, my torso is in this kind of unfamiliar zone. And it's just simple. Bend the right knee, step the left foot beside it. The knees are next to each other. And then I want you just to offer that focus of forward bend. So the hands could reach down, your head down. You can take your feet apart. You could use your blocks in front of you, farther forward. This is a great one. Spine reaching, you choose. If you don't like any of these and you want to dangle and hold your elbows, perfect. But immerse your focus in the second of the inversions when your head is below the heart. We just did that a few moments ago with the arms pushing, but now the feet are pushing. Just exist for a few moments with the circulation forward and down. Breathing, bending. Okay, now take the blocks and the right support besides your feet, enough balance on your hands on the blocks, and then bring your feet closer together and step the right foot back. Okay, so we'll start with what we remember from last side. Was the heels a little bit up for me? For some of you, it might be on the floor, I suppose. For some, it's going to stay up at the wall. And the left knee I start to lengthen the back of that left thigh to stretch through the leg. Balance out the hips a little bit here. And really feel last time you just kind of focused on that the leg in the front was straightening out, but your hips were kind of a little bit shifty. You weren't even sure what they were doing. Yeah, feel if you can bring that right hip to center a little bit downwards. Yeah, this will increase the pressure onto your legs, the muscles, right? So you're going to have to kind of resist a bit more, right, with your balance. Okay, now take this one slow. This one we're going in towards it's a really beginning inversion. Most people teach it to prepare for any standing poses, seated wide angle. It's a good prep for things like lotus pose, for headstand. It's a great hip flexibility pose. So we're using it for simply that, for hip flexibility and for quad strength. So we're not going to go stand on our head. But I want you to bring your block in the left hand in the inside of the left foot and take it slow. So you're going to turn so the right heel lowers to the floor. I'll take my blocks to the right side, turning right, and then take a wide step. So scoot yourself. I'm going to use all these props. I'm going to just be propped up. So hopefully you can see me okay. So I have a wide stance. My right foot is next to the wall. And I'm using the contour of my foot. So your foot is likely, it's got a little contour, right, with bones. Not perfectly straight. There's all these bones. So take the stance wide, and your emphasis is to go farther down. Okay. So first things first, I try to straighten my legs. Okay, I have a little micro bend in my knees because I know that hyperextending is not something my legs want to experience a long time. So I'm going to reach, but when I lower down, my quadriceps have to kind of pull up and strengthen so while I don't crumble. Okay, so when my hands lower down, for me it works okay. I can put my hands inside the line of my feet, forehead, head, crown of the head down, but you might find, and I like this one too, is to use the bolster. So if this works for you, you can have your blocks besides your bolster, flat, and then you're trying to bring your head down, right? So I have a blanket under my bolster, so it's so much closer. But again, you got to come back to that micro bend of the knees and crown of the head down. If you already touch your head down, you're actually putting more round in the neck if you can already do that. So then you wouldn't want that if you can stretch down. So I want you to work on the hips, the flexibility here in the hips, by keeping the legs in this wide stance. If it's too wide, bring the left foot in, move it a little towards the wall, right? If it's too much, and go from there. Give it another about 12 to 15 breaths. So if it's easy for you and you want to go all into it, you can have your hands on the sides of the lower legs, bend your elbows, move them out, right? So your armpit, you're airing out your armpits, and all the way down you go. Okay, and see if you can find that balance. So you are actually trying to balance the crown of the head down. There you go. Yeah, you're aiming towards the ground space. And if you're kind of in a little bit of a lurch, you're kind of up, but you're grasping and pulling. Again, let gravity help you move down. So you kind of know if the weight of your head, your bowling ball, goes down, you're going to kind of flip over. So you want to find some strength in your quads so you don't flip over or you don't somersault. Okay, let's try this. Let's bring the right hand to the left leg, take a twist. Left hand up, strengthen into your hip. Right, you can bend your knees, but I'd rather have you bend them evenly if you're bending them, not leaning to one knee more than the other. Turn the waist to the left. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, and then turn the other side. Left hand to right leg, twist. Breathe. You can turn to look towards your arm. Okay, good for trying it. Come down, and then if you've got your bolster, I would just leave it. In fact, what I'm going to do is push my blanket towards the wall, put my bolster right in front. I'm going to do pigeon pose soon, so you want to kind of set up for this. Take your blocks with you to the left foot, turn away from the wall for that moment, lower your right knee down on the blanket, and walk your left foot over to the right side of the mat. Okay, lean into that pigeon pose. The hips are already waking up for it because of the last set. So I'd say something about pigeon and the connection of these two shapes. This might be a nice way for you to kind of improve that hip range, is to do that wide stance, wide angle standing pose. Most people call it wide stance. And then coming into pigeon pose can be a nice balance. So lean into it and let the weight of your elbows center. Let your head maybe lean down. You could have your elbows on the floor or on your blanket. You really don't have to follow any of these exact descriptions. I like to have my right foot lift up at the wall sometimes to kind of anchor into my left hip. If your knee doesn't hurt, this is a good one to practice. Use the props to help your knee. So something under the left hip is good. And feel the belly move with the breath. Great. Now when you center your core, like kind of think of the front of your spine, kind of navel center up towards the heart, that area. Feeling that gently arch. Okay, now you're one-sided on this. There's more heat on one side. So let the weight lean to that left side, and then kind of be a little curious how you get into that second side. Not following anything specifically, but the weight goes on that left hip, and I lean into my sitting bones. Then I kind of stretch my right knee down forward. I go eventually, but you don't have to go straight in front like you're diving. You might kind of lean into it and kind of feel around the hip. Right, so I stretch my left leg back now. My right knee is bending. The heel is towards my bolster. And then I use my hands to, and again, less is more. Finding how you can kind of wind your way into the circulation in the flesh, right? It's all this circulation of all this connective tissue. It's kind of all we're doing. But when you're leaning down, you want to find just when it kind of starts to ripen in the hip. So just that right amount of kind of marinating that hip. Okay, so you kind of seal it, and the part of where you kind of feel it sealing, not sealing like my ceiling, but sealing the circulation, is probably from where the knee is and then back up to the pelvis. Right, those areas kind of are centering spots. I like to emphasize what I'm doing on the bolster, like I'm kind of tilting into it a little bit, gently arching the spine. Yeah, if you're too close to the wall, you're too close to the wall, right? You might have to move a little forward. You might put your foot a little bit up at the wall. The higher the back foot goes, the more intense it will be in the right hip. So just know if you bring your foot towards your butt off, it's going to perk up the hip, which could be a good perk. It might be a bad perk. Okay, so you've got to tune in. Do any movements that feel helpful. Maybe it's cat-cow, moving the waist a little bit, rounding and flexing and arching and reaching. Okay, now as the back has to activate, we've got a pretty active back here, just to be, it's not all like kind of butter soft, right? It's not the back, it's toning. Now let the weight lean into that right hip, and then as you come back with the hands, let's see how we can get into legs up. Let's just play with this. So we're seated onto the bolster. Some of you might not be on a bolster, but you're going to lean and you'll push your blocks out. You don't really need them for a bit, so you can push them out. You will need your belt. You will need a ball at some point, but you're going to turn. So you need this one blanket on the other side of your mat that's away from the wall. And I would just turn towards the wall, slide my blanket out. I need a sandbag. I think we're going to need this for maybe at the very end. Okay, but we're going to place the sandbag in our lap. Okay, shift your hips on the front, right? You don't want to be too close to the wall, but you can always move away. But when you lower back, and definitely when I'm short, so my closeness to the wall is not as important as you being distant. Okay, all right, so when I've got my back pelvis on the bolster, my head is definitely on one blanket, quarter full, next to my shoulders, but not under my shoulders. Now, when you bring your knees in, your work is trying to scoop up the sand. And let's just be here now with it. I quickly run to the awareness of what we do later, but be here. So we lift up and feel the scale of awareness in the back of the legs, right? It feels good after pigeon to do this. Because now this whole area that was kind of pinched for the reason of the hip marinating, now I can like flush it out. So these leg parts, right, the circulation in them, the fluid retention in the calves drains out through the feet. So let the ribs center. Maybe close your eyes if you feel safe with the sand where it's at. You don't have to put on your feet. Maybe it doesn't work. So you might just have your feet straight up. But come back to that feeling of the breath. So maybe it's a little below the rib area. I want you to feel it in the ribs though. That's kind of three-dimensional focus with breathing. Expansion on the in-breath. Exhaling completely, however it's comfortable. Just don't make the breath really loud, right? That's not a healthy breath pattern. I want to make it slow, deep. Don't wear yourself out. You got some time ahead here, so don't wear it out. Smooth it out. Yeah, the feet probably don't change the breath, right? Even though it seems like this is dynamic. It's lowering the heart rate, the blood pressure. Okay, so we're going to bend through the legs, and likely you want the sand to go either that direction overhead or carefully to the side. You just want to be careful of the knees. I don't want you to bend the knees and then tug on the sand and then it kind of torques the knee. So it's best just to get rid of it, right? And you don't have to push and wring out the knee. So if it's okay for you just to slide the sand, actually, let's do this. Let's bring the left leg down and put the sand on the top of that left thigh, that very thigh lid, top of that left thigh, right? So you get a feeling of some pressure in the femur. You're going to press into I like to push into the wall. I do light in this version, but I happen to be next to the wall with my foot. But, it's overrated probably. So take your belt. You got a big loop, okay? You're going to reach it under the right foot somehow and take the right leg straight up and pull. Really get the feel of the connectivity. Now, if you want to go into brain float, go for it. You can tighten the belt down if you need to. This is way too big of a loop, I can tell already. But sometimes it's good to have enough loop so that you are completely stretching through. So the back of my head leans into the belt, the circulation on the back of the leg. And I just think this is a great one. I haven't done this for a while. So nice to reset a brain float pose. So feel how your foot is pushing a bit into the belt, or maybe it's your brain pushing back to stretch out the leg. Maybe it's not the leg. It's best not to know, huh? All right, so feeling how the foot is responding. It might not like this and be kind of twitching. So you might have to scoot the belt closer to the heel or just where it centers on the foot. If it's really slipping around, give yourself a little more length with the belt. If your foot can't settle. Goalpost arms or down by the sides. So I sometimes like the arms on the bolster. So that traction in the neck. Such a mobile part of the body, that cervical spine. So mobile. Goes all directions. So feel that you can relax your throat. You might tend to kind of grip up here in the very top where it meets into this amazing amount of circulation in the esophagus, glottis. See if you can let this area center. Okay, now take the sand, bring it up to your belly. Okay, switch the croquettes up. You can still center on the neck, and you could put your hand behind your head so it doesn't fly away. Right foot goes down, and then change the sand. Now, you might notice in the very beginning, the foot placement is a little different on each side. It's probably some relationship to other parts besides the foot. It could be the pelvis flexibility, the hip on one side. The foot might hold the belt better on one foot. There's differences. And then let your arms be where it's comfortable. It could be down by the sides. It could be open. It could be behind you. Slow breath through the nose. Shoulders are still. Ribs move. Okay, now as you press into your bottom foot, if it's not touching the wall, there is some advantage to that, right? Because you can slide the sand away nearby. You could find some advantage to bringing the right foot down, bottom of the foot on the floor. Okay, now when you take the hands behind your head, slide the belt away and come back to holding onto the belt with both hands, holding the foot, stretching out, and feeling if the leg is straight up instead of trying to yank it as far back as possible. Just feel how that relates to the pelvis. It's interesting, right? I don't want to kind of jerk the leg back. I want to feel it's just straight up. Okay, bend the knee. Take the belt off and placing it away. And now we'll take a ball. Okay, so grab onto that, place it between the knees, and just let the knees go side to side. Just simple. Ball between the knees or a block, and the knees go side to side. So loosen up the hips. Okay, so this final spinal should be really nice for your relationship from your lower to upper extremities. Okay, now, even though upper extremities feel pretty quiet, they're not really dynamically motioning much, so not helping out. But you want to feel how your back touches down. And more interesting for me is I feel like I need more blanket for whatever reason. So I'm kind of tightening on my neck. So just feel your head maybe nod a little side to side. So if my knees go left, my head goes right. This is a nice circulation balance for your ribs, your chest. It looks pretty simple. Okay. Kindergarten yoga. Everything we need to know. And then when you come back in center, you'll feel the feet are free, right? They don't have much to push into yet. So when I bring the knees to the chest, I'm going to reach for my bolster. I'm actually just touch it. I'm not going to activate and reach, but touch it. And push it forward away from under your back for a few moments and just get a feel right before you land on the tail. Okay, now you're centered. Now, feel the feet still up off of the bolster for a few more moments. Lengthen the spine. Ribs expand. Okay, now I would put your feet on the bolster and then push it to the wall. Can you get there? You get to the wall. Okay. Now, for me, I need to get closer to the wall because my height is not helping me out there. So I'm going to scoot a little bit so that my feet touch the bolster, right? They're not on the edge of the bolster. They're on the top of the bolster, as far as I can tell. They're contoured. The bolster is not entirely flat. Now, blanket under head, this feels helpful for me today, but maybe not you, so you choose. And just keep the ball between the knees and lift up the hips and help them out. So give them a little awareness. Lift up hips and then lower them down, palms by your sides. Okay, so make sure that ball is in a good spot so you don't have to put extra energy into holding it. It's just there. It's pretty helpful. Okay, hands on the hips, push into your feet, inhale, lift up. And my hands are on the hips. I'm trying to encourage like my thumbs underneath that contour to lift up, just help them out. And then relax them back down. Okay, so spine is stretching. Now arms go overhead. Inhale. Okay, neck should be soft. You don't have to grip your neck, and letting go. So this is an important part of breathing through the nose, right? If we're not talking while we do this, you can relax your throat. Lower down. And then feel that rocking motion of the pelvis, that lifting and releasing. Okay, last time you find that motion, go slow See if you can do less of a aggressive bridge pose, just not that anyone's doing that, but lift up the hips. Just easy going. Maybe when you lower your spine, you can feel how it combs through the sides of the back. Okay, now once your hips are down, your arms could stay in a trance here, but you're going to bring the knees to your chest and remove the ball. Keep it though, because we're going to play hip crossover, so you're going to have a ball. Maybe toss it to the wall and see if it comes back to you. Okay, so take your bolster with your feet to push it over to the right side. And then you're going to take the left leg and cross it over on top of the bolster. All right. Ball goes to the sacrum area. Crossover, left arm opens out. Okay, now I forgot something. Sand on the outer left thigh. Okay, it is okay if you don't use sand. It might not be what you want, so you can always add or not, or remove it if it's too much after a few moments. It's going to feel like it's a little bit of that weight bearing, right? When you have that sand support. So left arm is open. Head maybe turns to the left side. If the neck will offer that support, a blanket under the head is, I think, really important on this one. And then when you feel your head turn, your head turns, your chest is open, and your left leg crosses over. Right hand could be on the sand. I think it's probably best where it's comfortable. It's not trying to activate the shoulder joint that much. Just the right amount to relax your chest. And enjoy the motion of the breath internally, of course. Now scanning for yourself, where you feel this highlight in your left hip. Like, do you feel it where the sand is? Like, is it a leg, bone, increasing that intensity or density, you could say. That's kind of similar. Intensity and density. You need intensity for density. Breathing. Your head shift back in center. Okay, now switching sides. Sand goes away. Ball move. Bring the weight back to both sides of the back of the pelvis first. That's the focus, not necessarily exactly how your feet are, but feel the pelvis and then taking the bolster to the left side. And the crossover, I know we get kind of stuck on directions. It's not the best thing, but we're really trying to feel the awareness of our back line. And then when we cross the right leg to the left, it's creating that rotation, which helps the circulation right now in the hip. And hopefully this upper leg support and emphasis just might help around the knee, right? Sometimes if you get into a bit of a knee problem, hip work is really helpful. It's an interesting connector, right? It's obviously a joint, and so is a knee. So you want to get a feeling of the upper joint, right? That's higher. The knee is in a very challenging spot in the body, so you've got to give it some help. So if the sand close to the knee, I find it feels more supportive of my knee than if it's higher on the hip, but some people find the opposite. So if your sand is up higher, fine, or lower. And then open out the right arm, turn your head to the right, and feel the waist gently motion with the breath, even if it doesn't feel like you have this massive stretch, or it feels to me quite pleasant to reorganize the spaces I breathe into. That's kind of one of my thoughts sometimes with practicing. Even if I don't know what pose or whatever that means to do, I just find some props and just try to stretch it to get some spaces to open up. And let the spine gently feel that arch. You know, slide the ball away, and then last the sand. You might use the sand when your legs go up the wall. You might not today. You can decide. But when you bring the spine back to center, take the knees into the chest for a moment. Breathe. Roll a little side to side on the back of the pelvis, and then rotate to any direction. Maybe you always go left, so you should go right. So find that direction, and then come up, and we'll take our body as close to the wall as we can get. Okay, so add a bolster, and you'll add yourself on top of it. So blanket goes closer to the bolster. And when I lean into the bolster, I've got to sit up on it and into the wall. Okay, I like having a sandbag on my feet, but sometimes it's interesting to try without. And there's different things you can do without it as well. So when you, in fact, if you're going to try it without, here, let's add this idea real quick. Get a belt. If you're not sure you're going to use your sand, you want to see different things. Have your belt, and if it's already connected, keep it in that loop and onto the side. And then bring your hips back to the wall, your sitting bones, and then see if you can swing the legs up. Yeah, the legs go up, hips are on the bolster. Okay, again, if you're always used to the sand, you might try other things. Now, one thing you know is the feet together, knees out is a good wall pose. This is a great way to do this pose because gravity is, you're just going to stretch out the legs so much easier in some ways than when you're sitting upright. The pelvis is in a natural arch right now. Your spine is in a natural arch, sorry, not so much, well, the pelvis is lifted. So it's a really interesting way to stimulate the circulation in the lymph, right? Intensifying that flow. But I also like, this is so simple, is to take the belt around the legs, and I can do a couple of things. You can have the belt to the feet. I'm going to show you a couple. And if you have a really big wall space, you can let the legs go far out, so farther and farther, and have the belt hold them. The lower leg bones, you can also have the belt again around the feet. If you can figure that out, that might feel good. So I don't have a lot of wall space to put my left foot out. So this is as far as I can go. Or you can have and you might go farther. You can take your belt around the legs. This is what I see most often. So my legs are about hips distance. I can let my legs be here, put my sand on my ribs. Okay, last offering. Okay, a little bit lower ribs towards the belly, not above, so it can perch up there. And I could also tighten the belt a little bit. I need some looseness on the belt so I can get my sand on my feet though. And then I'll put my sand on my feet. So I'll do double focus. This is a good one too. And you can tighten it up again. Yeah, and the tightening of the belt is, funny enough, it's to calm the nervous system, is to have the belt on you and press and pull so it's tight. It's like touch on the body when it feels safe and it's pushing like massage, it's calming for the nervous system. So what we're using is our sandbag and our belt. Okay. Just yourself. Okay, now center your spine, whatever you've chosen. Maybe you have your belt on your feet or on your ankles. Maybe you just have a sandbag on your feet. Maybe all these things are too much, but let your spine center back to the weight of your brain and just get the right amount of inhale through the nose. Belly moves with the breath. Noticing any areas that might be gripping. It could be neck connection to the upper back and shoulders. And rest the space behind the heart. Starting to feel the circulation, reversing that flow of gravity to the heart. Maybe something you notice. It may not be really that apparent until you've had the class and the day goes by and you notice it. Just an interesting circulation experience. It could be it. Might be more in the brain. So just that overall sense. You're not going to feel it all because you would go crazy if you felt everything working in the body. Your nervous system is settling. That's the best part. Okay, now feel the feet. Actually, if you've got a belt on the legs, on the upper part, you want to unbuckle that now. And if you have your belt on your feet and not your sand, well, then you just bend your knees and slide that away. That would be fine. But if you do still have sand, take the feet off of the wall and bend through the knees and then remove that sand and feel when the knees are bending first, the spine is stretching second. Or maybe it's the other way around. Okay, I am the other way around. I'm backwards. So feel when the knees are in that bending position, and likely when you're on the back, you probably crease your knees with a little bit more ease than if you were like in a squat with your feet below you, all that pressure, right? So enjoy this kind of movement with the knees. Just kind of feel when the body's upside down, that circulation release, right? All that fluid retention just from standing on these feet. You can release that. So this is a good one for homework, just the legs up. They could be just on a chair or a couch. They don't have to be up a wall. But when you rock side to side, get a feeling of that circulation around the kidneys. No kidding. And as you feel the spine cross over, you're going to roll, and you never know if it's graceful or it's not. So you roll to the side. You really want to find that cannonball shape. And then you've got to move your head, push your hands, and then come up and take a seated position. So the spine feels like it's lifted, but bring your spine back, your head centered up, and with the hips pressing down. So from my hips centered, the legs moving out from the hips, spine lifting up out of the hips. Bring your hands up center between the heart. And let's take a moment with focus together So breathe in wellness, but also considering each of us and the awareness that we bring to the practice, the quality, the focus, the reverence for ourselves and each other into our life. Take a deep breath in, and with exhalation, bowing into the space.